All right, decoders, welcome back. Hope you guys are all good out there today. And today we have Derek with me again from Gematrinator. Thanks for joining, Derek, as usual. And we're going to go over some interesting stuff going on right now, considering what happened with Kamala and her vice president pick. And also, as usual on my channel, we're going to go over some of the wrestling stuff that's going on. But please give me a thumbs up in the chat if the sound is good for me. And also, Derek, if you want to give them a hey to make sure they're good.
Yeah, what's going on, everyone? Thanks again to Cody for having me back.
No problem. Appreciate you. All right. So we'll wait for the thumbs up. Shy's in the chat. Hello. See if we can get some thumbs up. Sounds good, they say. All right. So we're good to go. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Healer888. That's a good username for today, considering today is the 888 day. Anyways, Derek, I know you said you had a bunch of slides together that I think we'll let you go ahead and share your screen and let Derek go ahead and start off and give us a bit of an introduction. Well, let me just preface this by saying this is going to cover an event that's coming up at the end of the month called Bash in Berlin. And me and Derek are going to show how it's kind of connected with the vice president pick for Kamala Harris, whose name is Walz, and how Trump may also be connected with his connection with the Walz. So we'll give Derek's screen a share here.
All right. So essentially, this riddle is all centered around a WWE wrestler named Gunther, who at the most recent pay-per-view, SummerSlam, won the World Heavyweight Championship for the first time. And this guy, ever since he joined WWE, has been pushed straight to the moon. He debuted in 2019, a date that we'll look at shortly. Right around the same time, Tim Walz became the governor of Minnesota. And he had the record-breaking Intercontinental Championship reign. 666 days this guy held the Intercontinental title. And at the most recent event, he won the World Heavyweight Championship right before Tim Walz became the nominee. So this guy, Gunther, his real name is actually Walter. And during his time in the developmental part of WWE or NXT, he used the name Walter. So this is how he made his debut. And if you think of the name Walter, well, the first syllable is wall. Walter. And this, of course, provides a strong connection to Tim Walz, whose name looks like Tim Waltz, but is actually pronounced Tim Walz. So this name, Walter Hahn, the wrestler's real full known name, Walter Hahn has Sumerian gematria of 660. And this matches the state of Minnesota in the same cipher, the state that Tim Walz currently governs. The number 660 is also coded into his new ring name, Gunther. 660. And consider how Inauguration Day next year, January 20th, has primary numerology of 66 to go along. And Gunther is from Eastern Europe. Sometimes I joke that they could probably say this guy is from a different country every couple of weeks and no one would notice. But the symbolism that goes with his entrance reeks of East Germany and this old communist Soviet Union vibe. So we're going to look at how this connects to the Berlin Wall through this Bash in Berlin riddle that'll be playing out here. So Gunther was originally born in Austria, of course, the same country as Hitler, which kind of accentuates this connection. But notice how Vienna, the city, sums to 515 in standard gematria, which also matches the state of Minnesota, 515. This is the same as Jesus in this same method. And on top of that, his real name, Walter Hahn, is a super match with the state of Minnesota. So very strong connections right out of the gate between this guy and the state of Minnesota. His birthplace of Vienna, Austria, also sums to 197. And this is the number that connects the new vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, to Kamala Harris, as the pair was born 197 days apart. This also reflects the gematria of the phrase Berlin Wall, which is 1097 in the Latin or Agrippa's key method, also known as Jewish gematria. Now, 197 is the 45th prime number. This connects to Berlin Wall. Also, the phrase bridge and Golden Gate have that 45. Relevant, of course, because Kamala Harris, from the San Francisco area where she served as the district attorney, and San Francisco, home to the Golden Gate Bridge. And speaking of bridges, Minnesota had a very infamous incident with a bridge back in 2007 when the I-35 West bridge collapsed on August 1st of that year. So this bridge stretched 1,907 feet across the Mississippi River. So just a quick look at this. The I-35 West Bridge here. An 8-lane bridge that collapsed, resulting in the deaths of, 8 people? Can't quite recall. But that was a big event, and Tim Walz is synced up with the collapse of this bridge as well. In fact, this bridge stood for exactly 2,074 weeks. It says to have been opened in November of 1967. So measuring from the first day of that month to the collapse was 2,074 weeks. And these are the digits found in the gematria of Timothy James Walz, 2704. And also President Harris has this 274 with capital letters. And when Gunther was born, Kamala Harris was exactly 274 months old. And this also syncs up with some of the numbers with Tim Walz when he was nominated as the vice presidential candidate. Tim Walz was exactly 724 months old when Kamala made him the vice president pick, matching the Latin value of President Kamala Harris, 724. Like number of the beast. The same digits found here.
You know that.
So on the last day of August this year, we have Bash in Berlin. And when you write out WWE Bash in Berlin in Latin, it sums to the 318th prime number. And that matches the date of the event, the 31st of August, or 31/8. That date can also be written as 8/31, which matches the standard value of President Harris, 8/31. So this all syncs up with the collapse of the Berlin Wall back in 1989, November 9th. And on that date, Gunther was 2 years, 2 months, and 20 days old. And this 222 is a really important number to Kamala Harris, whose name equals 222, just like President Kamala Harris and also President Harris. And it's important to note that, Cody, you were the one who pointed this riddle out to me originally. So a lot of what I'm sharing here is, some of your finds as well. 220, also the value of Timothy James Walz, Timothy J. Walz, even the name Walz on its own. 202 in Satanic. So let's look closer at this date that the Berlin Wall was first brought down in 1989. The date November 9th is written as 1109 on the calendar here in the United States. And when you write out November 9th, it sums to 1109. This is a very important number, obviously, the 9/11 code in play. Berlin also 119 with capital letters. Well, 1109 is the 186th prime number. And in standard, the city of Berlin equals 186. And when the Berlin Wall came down, Gunther was exactly 116 weeks old, which is an upside down 9/11. On top of that, Gunther was also born 1,191 weeks after Kamala Harris. This reflecting the digits in the attack on the World Trade Center, 11901. And something else I wanted to point out here is that Kamala Harris is herself a riddle connected to the WWE and pro wrestling. Because remember, she was nominated back on August 11th of the year 2020 during Joe Biden's campaign. And here we see August 11th, 2020. Well, just 2 days before that, we had the death of a former WWE wrestler named Kamala, whose real last name is Harris, dead on August 9th, just 2 days before that nomination. So anybody who's questioning a connection between Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the WWE, I think would be quite remiss to see that. So Gunther's age on the date of the fall of the Berlin Wall on 9/11, as it's written in Germany, was an upside down 9/11, which is, of course, also a date very significant here in the United States. And the number 911 is the 156th prime. On top of that, 156 is the 119th composite number. So after I added composite numbers to the website a couple weeks ago, this is one of the things that jumped out at me first. Because we know this 156 connection is strong, but this just cements it even further. And the number 156 is huge to Tim Walz, whose name has double gematria of 156, including the Latin method, 1560. The city of Berlin also equals 156 in Latin. The number 33, when you write it out, equals 156. We'll talk a lot about 33 in a second. But notice how the name Donald J. Trump, also with this 156 in reverse Sumerian gematria. Now, during his presidency in 2017, Donald J. Trump visited the Western Wall of Jerusalem, which would later be recognized as the new capital of Israel. And he was the first president to ever do this, to visit the Western Wall and give it a little smooch, which is tradition there in the Jewish faith. And isn't it interesting, Cody, that visit to the wall, which you gave me a heads up on, 10,056 days after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And also consider how Berlin sums to 33 in reduction, while the word wall sums to the 33rd triangular number, 561. And of course, 561 has the same digits as 156. So just an incredibly powerful code here. So back on January 12th of 2019 is when this wrestler Gunther makes his WWE debut in the NXT brand. And when he made his debut, once again, he came in as Walter, the big wall code. Well, it just so happens that this pay-per-view event was just 5 days after Tim Walz was sworn in as the governor of Minnesota. The very next day, on January 8th of 2019, Donald Trump gave a special speech from the Oval Office specifically about the border wall. And if we take a look here at the date, President Trump's address to the nation on the border crisis, January 8th of 2019, just one day after Tim Walz was sworn in. And you have to appreciate the date of this address, 108, matching the ordinal gematria of Berlin Wall. This date also had numerology of 48, matching the ordinal sum of wall. And the phrase border wall has matching gematria with Minnesota. On the date of Trump's address about the border wall, Tim Walz was 20,001 days old. And of course, the 9/11 attacks in the United States were in the year 2001. On top of that, check out the number of lunar phases from this speech all the way back to the start of the construction of the Berlin Wall. Trump's speech was exactly 710 lunar phases later. And the name Donald John Trump equals 710 in satanic. Berlin, Germany, also 71 in reduction. And just think about these digits 2 and 1, right? Remember Berlin, we had East Berlin and West Berlin. East Germany, West Germany. Two Germanys would then unite into one Germany. Just like how the Twin Towers had two towers and then changed into one tower upon reconstruction in 2014. So the name Gunther also has this matching 33 gematria with Berlin. He made his WWE debut in the city of Blackpool, England. And Blackpool equals both 33 and 156. The name Walter Hahn also sums to 160, matching Berlin Wall and the Wall. And the 160th prime number is 941, which is the value of wall in Latin. I mean, it's crazy how well this comes together. The number 33 also coded into Kamala Harris's age when the Berlin Wall fell, as she was exactly 300 months and 3 weeks of age. Berlin 33. And also WWE and World Wrestling Entertainment share this 156 with Berlin. And rather comically, back in the 90s, well, I guess probably the year 2000, 2001, WCW had a wrestler named The Wall. And he was the bodyguard of another wrestler named Berlin. So I don't know who's writing this stuff, but it's pretty funny. So this guy who played Berlin, he was born in West Germany. And his name was Alex Wright, with his bodyguard, The Wall. And wouldn't you know, the name Alexander Wright sums to 1560 Latin, matching Tim Walz in the same cipher. And then Berlin, 156, matching his new ring name, although they tweaked it to a Y, of course. So wrestling has been doing this Berlin Wall riddle for literally decades. Berlin was born 141 days after the Wall's birthday. He was also born 11 years and 41 days after Tim Walz. Well, in ordinal, the Berlin Wall equals 141. And when we had this Minnesota bridge collapse, notice how Gunther was exactly 1,041 weeks of age. On that same date of the collapse, Tim Walz was 117 days after his birthday. The word bridge sums to 117 in multiple ciphers. The name Walter Hahn, also 1163. This matches the Brown Lou Nation number that Donald Trump was sworn into office under. And next year's inauguration day in the year 2025. And notice how Tim Walz will be 22,205 days old on that day. Inauguration day equals 225. Timothy James Walz, 225 in Latin ordinal. And this inauguration will also be 2,205 days after Trump's special speech on the border wall. So I have a few more miscellaneous notes. I don't know if you have anything to add to that yet, Cody.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing with the I'm glad you brought that in because I would have never remembered the whole thing with Berlin and the wall and WWE. And it was also great to mention the Kamala wrestler part too, because it seems that it's pretty clear that wrestling has been paralleling Kamala Harris and this Berlin Wall thing, which, like I said, I would have never remembered that because I knew about it, but it was something that just glazed into my mind. Probably I don't even know when I found out about that wrestler. I wasn't watching it back. I mean, I think I was watching it, but I wasn't I was a little kid still back then. But
yeah. See, I have the advantage of being a little old now, and when I started watching wrestling, I mean, it was still the 80s technically. But then I got back into wrestling in 1998, right around the Attitude Era. And, WCW was hot at the time. So this stuff was definitely in the consciousness of us wrestling geeks back then.
Yeah. So, I mean, that just added even more parallel to it. Because when I was bringing in this WWE thing, I totally wasn't thinking about this Berlin and the wall thing. And the fact that his name, Alexander Wright, equals Tim Walz it's pretty crazy, actually.
It's perfect. I mean, the guy was born in Nuremberg, West Germany. He comes out with this bodyguard named the Wall. I mean, how can you not say that American politics is scripted decades in advance when you see this kind of stuff? It just comes together way too well.
Yeah, Nuremberg. It's funny you mentioned Nuremberg. That's pretty much where my girlfriend's from. That's where I'm usually at. We're literally 5 minutes or not 5. It's not 5 minutes, but like an hour or so away from Nuremberg. So
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to go over the miscellaneous stuff, or I mean, I can kind of go in. It doesn't really matter. You can hit your stuff if you want.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the most interesting stuff. I guess Inauguration Day, when Tim Walz potentially becomes the vice president, it'll be 911 weeks and 6 days after the Minnesota bridge collapse in his state. That bridge collapse, I thought it was interesting. That's also the 152nd day of the year.
Huh.
And yeah. 152, how often have we seen this with Kamala?
Well,
Kamala was... Go ahead.
One day is going to come up in my decode because I'm going to connect Walter or Gunther to the Walter who was part of the Berlin Wall. So he was born or he died, one of the two. I can't remember now if he died or he was born on that day. He was born on August 1st. Walter Ulbricht. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about him. But it seems that date is important because even the guy who's responsible for the actual Berlin Wall has a connection to that date also.
Oh, that's cool. I look forward to that. Kamala had the 152 in her age when the Berlin Wall came down. But when the Berlin Wall first started being built, Donald Trump was exactly 15 years and 2 months old. And of course, it was 15 weeks, 2 days before Election Day that Kamala took over for Biden. This is the number that connects her full name to female president and Joe Biden. Pass the Torch, Chariots of Fire, the Simpsons episode. We went over all this. It's pretty good. Trump was inaugurated 27 years and 72 days after the wall came down. And this was Tim Walz's age when Trump visited the Western Wall, 2,772 weeks. which is kind of connected to the gematria of 823, which has the same value as Timothy James Walz and Kamala Harris. And I point this out because when the Minnesota Bridge collapsed, it was 8 months, 23 days after the anniversary of the Berlin Wall, but also Tim Walz had the 823 in his age for that date too.
Mm-hmm.
So of course it runs deep. And then another big connection to WWE is that the wall was brought down 10,316 days after it was built. And this was a number I talked about with WrestleMania, because Roman Reigns dropped the title after holding it for 1,316 days. And then you had Seth Rollins, who was the champion for 316 days. And what I should also share is that in reverse standard, the name Jesus Christ equals 1316, coming down on 9/11. And a lot of people think Jesus was born on September 11th or 9/11.
You know what I
it wouldn't
think
be
is
complete without some mockery of Christianity. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you know what I think is interesting still about this 1316. There's two things. Well, I mentioned this in one of my videos, but the Tetragrammaton, YHWH equals 1316, and I think it's in Latin, I believe.
It might be. Yeah. I actually had a whole list of 1316s for my decode. I can probably dig that up before I get to my next post here. I did have a few more things worth talking about, but I figured I'd let you go first, and then maybe we can come back.
Okay, yeah. And then the other thing with the 1316, or not only the Tetragrammaton, because this last WrestleMania was WrestleMania 40, which I already connected how that was definitely, and the front of the first night of WrestleMania this past year had the 4 people on it. It had the Rollins, Rhodes, Rock, and Reigns all start with the R, right? R. But the 4, I think, represented the Tetragrammaton. I think that is one of the things they paid tribute to with the 1316. The other thing I thought was possible is that you have that John 3:16 in there, almost as if saying as Roman Reigns is the one, or the 1:3:16. And in the book of John, it says John 3:16, God sent his only begotten son, right? So his only begotten son, like his one son. And I just think there might be a lot more to that number, but I think those are possibly two of the things that, as to why it ended up being that amount of days that Roman Reigns was reigning. So,
yeah, I actually have a list of 1316s, I should say. And I guess I'll just throw this back up real quick. If I can pull this. It's actually crazy how many 1316s I found. Oh, wait, I got to actually share it. Yeah, there we go. So not only does Jesus Christ equal 1316, but so does Yeshua in the same cipher. You have Yahweh, as you mentioned. Return of Jesus, 1316. Jesus Christ, second coming, 1316. Jesus, second coming, 1316. New start, heart, earth,
wow.
Ashes, 11th of September. What's going on here? This is incredible to me. This blew my mind.
Yeah. I remember seeing the Jesus Christ second coming 1316 before, but the other one, Return of Jesus, and then Yeshua even, and Jesus Christ. I mean, come on now. I mean, guys, again, show them again how long Roman Reigns reigned, and so that they can understand why we're talking about this number and how they just paid tribute to this in Philadelphia, by the way. So I think, in the Berlin Wall, standing that amount of days also is just, and it's just interesting too that Rollins, who equals Jesus Christ in one of the ciphers, and even played a Jesus Christ character, and even was the brother in the Shield with Roman Reigns, his reign was 316, almost as if saying he's he's one short of Roman Reigns. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of like the second fiddle. Like
Right.
I think that one in front of the 316 emphasizes the one. Like, you know what I mean? Like the one, the chosen one, almost as I would see it. And then the 316 without the one represents the missing one. That's how I kind of see it here. But
yeah,
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, powerful stuff here.
So yeah, and we're gonna get back to, but that was a good thing to add for sure, because I wanted to talk about that for a while now, that 1316. And so again, I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit about what Derek talked about, but really my decode is gonna focus on almost just one number. And I didn't really plan on this being the case when I first started the decode, but I just kept seeing this same number coming up. So I just kind of had to follow it through. But so anyway, the wall, right? And Derek did an amazing job throwing in all the connections with Gunther and the Berlin Wall. And of course, again, I just added this to mind, Tim Walz. And then you had Trump, who calls the Trump Wall, which is also called the Wall. And so I thought this was just such a clear connection to this ritual, as Derek already pointed out, all the clear connections to Tim Walz and Harris and the Berlin Wall. Don't find it a coincidence that Harris nominated Tim Walz just a few days before the 63rd anniversary of the Berlin Wall being constructed. And that's important because 63 just happens to be the gematria of Berlin Wall and the gematria of the ticket, Harris Walls. So again, seems like perfect timing for them to be selecting this duo, who even has the wall in his name, connecting with the 63rd anniversary of the Berlin Wall. And I found this out at the end of the decode. I shared this with you, Derek, at the end. I found this out at the end, and I added this slide like literally last minute. But don't forget, Kamala equals 63 in Latin. And again, Harris and Walls equals 63 in the same cipher as the number 63 equals 63. So, and on top of that, don't forget the Berlin Wall equals 63. But if you type in Berlin Wall and the number 63 in Latin, so that not only do they match in the same cipher here with the 63s, Berlin Wall and 63 have the same gematria. And Derek talked about this number, 1097, in his decode also. But what are the chances? Berlin Wall, 63 in normal reverse reduction. And then if you type in the number 63, it equals Berlin Wall.
Yeah, that's a banger there.
So it just seemed like this number, I couldn't get away from it. So I just had to keep throwing this number out. Even when I typed the number out, it had the connection. So then I started looking more into the Berlin Wall. And again, as Derek pointed out, Gunther, or Walter Hahn, this guy's real name is Walter Hahn. And notice that he has, as Derek also pointed out already, he has the wall in his name, Walter. And this points us right back to the Berlin Wall, because one of the main people responsible for wanting to build the Berlin Wall was Walter Ulbricht. And his name is funny in many ways here. He not only has the Walter, like the wall, he also has the brick in his name, in the middle of his last name, bricks, like Freemasonry, like you often might build a wall out of bricks. But yeah, I just thought it was crazy that the guy who made the wall also, or was a big proponent of the wall, was Walter. And now you have this character being portrayed, and he's going to be the main stage guy at the Bash in Berlin. And Bash in Berlin just happens to equal 6. So I just showed you all the 63s with all this other stuff. And the name of the show coming up, Bash in Berlin, 63 in Latin reduction. And it's on 63 date numerology. 8 plus 31 plus 24 is 63. So yeah, I just couldn't get away from it. And as I looked a little bit more into this guy, notice all they talk about the East Block. So again, another reference to building blocks, bricks, Ulbricht. And yeah, but here's him on Time Magazine, East Germany's Ulbricht on Time Magazine with the chain around him. And a wall is kind of like a chain. It's kind of like a block. It stops you from getting out, right? It's a chain. So I feel they definitely, and this date that they started building this wall, August 13th. And notice that all these dates that we're talking about are in August. And it's funny that we're in August. August 13th was the date of the start of the construction of the Berlin Wall. I believe this guy, man, when was his birthday? I thought it was, I don't know why I put it so late in the decode. Oh yeah, he must have died on August 1st because he was born on June 30th. So Ulbricht, the guy who was a proponent of the wall, he died August 1st, and Derek mentioned that date, connecting with his decode. So yeah, it seems like a lot of these dates are in August. And the August 13th date is interesting because Donald Trump equals 138. And of course, this is a big Venus number that we've talked about in the past. But I don't think I'm going to talk about Venus, but I'm sure there is a connection here. So another thing I noticed is that not only does Bash in Berlin equals 63 in Latin reduction, in Latin, Bash in Berlin equals 306. And as Derek pointed out to me last month, the rule of Colel in Freemasonry, and again, we're talking about building walls, bricks, Freemasonry. The rule is that you can add or subtract the number 1 to any number, and it's considered the same value, basically, because the Kabbalists explained that the rule is pointing out that for them, 1 was not a number, but the monad symbolizes divinity. So again, this kind of goes with what I was telling you earlier, Derek. The 1 in front of Roman Reigns' 316 seems to represent his oneness or his divinity. But so anyways, if you use the rule of Colel and you type in Bash in Berlin, you get 306, which in the rule of Colel would be similar to a 307. And the reason that that's important is because going back to the 63s that I've already been hammering over and over again, 307 is the 63rd prime. And again, Bash in Berlin, 63 in Latin reduction.
If I could add real quick, the fact that Ulbricht died on August 1st, the same date as the Minnesota Bridge collapse. So he died exactly 408 months before that collapse. And that's the ordinal value of wall is 48. So there's a connection.
Oh, wow.
There too.
Wow, yeah.
And I knew something was up with the rule of Colel this year because on New Year's Eve, my nephew had come over and he brought his good friend, and he introduced him. And he's like, "Yeah, my name is Colel," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Anyway, go on.
Really? Somebody has a name Colel, huh?
I've never heard it before in my life.
No, it reminds me of Superman, Kal-El almost.
Right.
So another thing I noticed is I was looking into the German Democratic Republic, who were responsible for the Berlin Wall and the East Germany. The national emblem of East Germany features a hammer and a compass. Oh, wow. What do we know, guys? I mean, there we go. There's your Freemason. And so you got your compass, you got your hammer, also connected to building things. And not only that, but it's surrounded by a ring. They call it a ring of wheat. And I would be remiss to not mention this whole Saturn connection throughout this whole decode. Even in your decode, I wanted to talk about Saturn because Saturn is the Lord of the Rings, and Gunther equals Saturn. And Germany has a huge Saturn connection. In fact, even in Ingolstadt, where the Illuminati was founded, where near where my girlfriend lives, there's an arena called Saturn Arena. And they pay tribute to Saturn a lot in Germany. Even Hitler had connections to Saturn. And there's just, and another thing to mention here, being the ring, the wrestling ring, right? The wrestling ring. So, and Gunther a few months ago won the King of the Ring in Saudi Arabia, where they walk around the black cube in a ring. So Gunther is very connected to Saturn. So it's not a coincidence that Germany also has all this connection to Saturn, which I've noticed in my own research. And again, the symbol of the German Democratic Republic is the ring of wheat, they say, and ring of wheat equals 63, like Communist Party. Now, ring of wheat, another thing about this 63, and I think this is the reason why it's actually kind of important, is if you flip this number upside down, you get the 93, which is Saturn. So I think there seems to be something with that.
Yeah. Also, Cody, ring of wheat is 511 satanic, and Saturn is 511 Latin.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I didn't catch that, but yeah. Yep, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that this is definitely Saturn symbolism. And again, if I could bring Gunther, actually, let me just type in Gunther, because this is the main character of this show. Gunther, 93. Saturn, 93. And yeah, so this 93, the upside down 63, and as Derek pointed out, huge connection with the 511 also. And so I thought that was interesting. Communist Party 63, ring of wheat. And then I started looking more, and I noticed that, remember guys, Freemasonry turned 307 years old this year on June 24th. And again, this is the number I've been talking about, because 307 is the 63rd prime, and Freemason equals 307. And I also added in here that the word East equals 63, and this was all connected to East Germany. And also, I didn't even mention, connecting again with the Saturn. Saturn is also connected with the Grim Reaper, who has the sickle, which is also connected with harvesting wheat. So again, we have this wheat symbolism. I think it's all about Saturn, to be honest.
And notice how October 1st was the date, 1959. That was the same date as the Las Vegas shooting at the Harvest Festival.
Yeah. Yep. Yep, that's
was
a good
that
one.
58 years even? It was 58 years and 58 people were killed.
Oh, from which one?
Yeah, go back to the slide where you had this one. So October 1st, 1959, the GDR added their hammer and compass surrounded by corn. And that was exactly 58 years before 58 people were killed at the Harvest Festival in Las Vegas. So that's a really cool connection.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and the symbol is all about farmers and harvesting. The emblem was a symbol of allegiance of workers, farmers. Yeah, so, wow. Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, so here's just to beat it again even more into how this 63 just seems to be all over this. If you go from Walter Ulbricht, his birthday this year, if he was still alive, to the show in Berlin, it's 63 days. And again, Berlin Wall 63. He was a proponent of the Berlin Wall. Notice that he was born in 1893. There you go with your 93 again. But he was born on June 30th. And June 30th, no matter how you write it, you have the 306, like Bash in Berlin equals 306. Or if you write it in the United States form, you have 630, which is 63. So 63 days after his 6-3 birthday is Bash in Berlin, which equals 63. Berlin Wall 63. Yeah, Joe, I mean, crazy. And not only does Ulbricht have a connection to this, because don't forget, this guy's name is Walter also, but another main character of the show is the guy on the front, the centerpiece of the show, Cody Rhodes. And Cody Rhodes is born on June 30th, which is the same day Walter Ulbricht was born. And don't overlook Cody Rhodes is always wearing this. I've always thought his jackets clearly look like Freemasonry things. I mean, it just gives me that vibe. Military, like old war military, United States Freemasonry kind of look. Yeah, and so another thing I wanted to mention too with Walz, with this new supposed vice presidential nominee, he was born on April 6, 1964, and on the day that the deconstruction of the Berlin Wall started, he was in his 307th month, which again is the 63rd prime, going right back to the Berlin Wall. And on the day of Bash in Berlin, the event coming up on August 31st, which has 63 date numerology and equals 63, Walz will be 22,063 days old. And from the deconstruction of the Berlin Wall to the destruction of the Twin Towers is 11 years and 307 days. Again, 307, the 63rd prime, which again, I've been showing over and over. Sorry, that was my thumbnail from yesterday I had in there. But yeah, so over and over again, this 63 kept coming up. And yeah, I just think it's pretty undeniable considering what Derek already showed and how this number just seems to be encoded throughout this whole ritual. And another thing I wanted to add at the end, which I didn't make a slide about, but I do want to add it, is, and I wrote this to you, Derek, but from the construction or, oh, no, I want to talk about, I messed up. So I want to talk about Pink Floyd and the wall. Because I just couldn't leave this connection out. As soon as I was thinking about Walz, I couldn't leave this Pink Floyd connection out. So if you go from the release date of Pink Floyd's The Wall, the album that's literally called The Wall, so that's November 30th, 1979. So if you go from that date to the actual deconstruction of the Berlin Wall, which was on 11/9 or 9/11, 1989, and you do a span, it was exactly 119 months and 11 days. So, and again, the date that the wall came down or began its deconstruction, it was 11/9.
You know what else I noticed is that Walter Hahn, the wrestler, was born 4,911 weeks after Walter Albrecht.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some more 9/11 there.
Yeah, I wish I would have gotten more time to look into it, but I got distracted today with some things I needed to do here, and then all the stuff going on with the Ripple case. So I wish I would have gotten a chance to look a little bit more into the Walter Hahn and the Walter Ulbricht. But yeah, I mean, and look at that too. It's 9 years, 11 months, 11 days. Also, from the Wall by Pink Floyd. And you know, there's probably a whole decode to do about this album connected with this whole thing. Honestly, there's probably a whole huge connection. But yeah, and just to talk about why I had Derek bring up the bridge connection is because I really think that there is a Golden Gate Bridge riddle with this newly selected Tim Walz. And I didn't make slides once again about it, but I can try to pull this one thing up real fast. So if you go from Tim Walz's birth in 1964 to the start of the construction of the Berlin Wall, which was August 13th. Actually, it's one day before, or what was it? It was 100.
Span of 138 weeks or something. I think it was 138 weeks in one day after that date.
Yeah, and I talked about how the 138 was connected with, of course, Donald Trump equals 138. That connects with Trump wanting to build the wall. But I noticed, I don't know where I got the 966. I guess, what was I doing? I guess it was to the day after, or maybe, yeah, I guess maybe that wasn't the best measurement. But it was 966 days, which I thought was interesting because there was another connection with him and the Golden Gate Bridge. Because if you go from the Walls' birth to the deconstruction of the Golden Gate Bridge, it's 1158 prime days, which is the 1158 is the 966 composite. So I just thought there was a really interesting connection between the Berlin walls and the Golden Gate. But I think maybe that's a whole decode for another video that just focuses on the bridge itself. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else to add, Derek, that you saw?
Not to the bridge riddle specifically, just a little bit more about Minnesota. Because basically I did a video last week on the Sonia Massey shooting. And I thought this was really interesting because, you know, there's a big riddle with the Rust shooting. So try to make this short, but a day before Trump was allegedly shot, Alec Baldwin was acquitted of charges in the Rust shooting case. And Alec Baldwin played Trump on SNL. Now, that Rust shooting, it was really the first thing to happen like that since Brandon Lee was shot and killed in 1993 on the set of The Crow. And the guy who shot Brandon Lee on set was named Michael Massey. And then we get the shooting of Sonia Massey a week before Trump gets shot. Like, it's a little weird when you think of it this way. And Sonia Massey is like this year's George Floyd, right? Remember 2020? George Floyd was killed in Minnesota, Tim Walz' state.
Right.
On the anniversary of Floyd's death this year, we had the death of a golfer named Grayson Murray. And the officer who shot Sonia Massey was named Grayson. And the name Floyd means gray-haired. So there's a huge moon riddle with all of this, connecting them. And, you know, I did this whole video on Sonia Massey talking about the connection to Minnesota. And then, of course, a couple weeks later, the Minnesota governor gets named as the VP pick. Now, Tim Walz was nominated by Harris 32 days after Sonia Massey was shot. Minnesota's the 32nd state, and their governor, Tim Walz, equals 32. And Minnesota was founded on 5/11, the big Saturn date. And that was back in 1858.
Well, Minnesota was founded on 5/11?
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, that would make sense with the whole Minnesota 93 connection then, because Minneapolis 93 has all that 93 connections. Minnesota Timberwolves 93. Yeah, I made a bunch of connections with Minnesota earlier this year in the 93. So that would also make sense.
Yeah, definitely. So we get Tim Walz with that 32. And then Tim Walz, you know, he was nominated exactly 67 months after he became the governor of Minnesota. And that's his name. Timothy James Walz is 67. Kamala Harris, the 67th prime number. Well, Sonia Massey was shot on the 6th of July, or 6/7. And her name's Sonia Massey, 156, which matches Tim Walz in multiple ciphers. On the date Sonia Massey was shot, Tim Walz was exactly 723 months old, which will be Kamala Harris's exact age on Inauguration Day. And then Walz was 724 months old when he was nominated a month after the Massey shooting. Timothy Walz was also exactly 60 years and 4 months old. This is a number I talk about with Skull and Bones equals 604. Tim Walz was born on 604, the 6th of April. Skull and Bones headquartered at 64 High Street, and 64 is the product of 32 times 2. So that seems to be important because when you write out 223 or 322, you get 295 like Skull and Bones Society. And Tim Walz was exactly 295 lunations old when Sonia Massey was born. You also get a strong 666 riddle. President Harris has matching 198 gematria with Beast. And Sonia Massey shot 198 days before Inauguration Day. Just like the two Democrat candidates born a span of 198 days apart. That's also 6 months and 14 days matching Kamala Harris. Now, when Tim Walz became the governor of Minnesota, he had 4 nines in his age, right? The upside down 6, 9999. Well, 666 equals 2038. And when he was nominated for the VP, he was 22,038 days old. And it was also 2,038 days after he became the governor. And if he does become the vice president, it'll be 666 months after the moon landing, which is a huge number connected to NASA. 47th president, Beast 47. We see what they're up to. We're on to you guys. Yeah. So that's pretty much all I had.
It's just like this 666 stuff is, you know, with that Gunther thing too. He was 666. It's just every time I watch Michael Cole, the announcer of WWE, every time I watch him and he says he was reigning for 666 days, and he does it's people just don't catch that. Like it's just he reigned for 666 days.
Right. I mean, and how often do they say exactly how long he's held the belt, you know, but even though the reign is over, they still harken back the 666. Yeah, like how many people hear that and think maybe there's more to this? I don't know. These are wrestling fans we're talking about, so I mean, we're wrestling fans, but maybe we're the exception. It's not always the highest IQ crowd, but I could be wrong. You know.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. Definitely not the highest IQ crowd. Just because I know I've been watching it plenty of years, I've seen plenty of fans, and I've watched it plenty of times. I just looking at the fans in the audience. I hate to be judgmental, but I mean, you can just tell, you know, like
and then you see something that's so obviously part of the show, but online there's like hundreds of people are like, "Oh, that was crazy! I can't believe that happened." It's like that was Mark. That was just part of the show. This is all scripted. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, and then even like this whole thing that's been going on with Ripple, the judge that just ruled yesterday, her full name equals 666. So. And man, that was so scripted. I mean, I found out more today about that. You know, the judge, it was a year and 25 days ago that she made a ruling on XRP being not a security. A year and 25 days later, she makes her final judgment, and her name equals 125. And the CEO of Ripple, Bradley Kent Garlinghouse, equals 125 in the same cipher as her. And in Fibonacci, which I didn't know yesterday when I made this video, in Fibonacci, XRP equals 125. And the big number that I talk about, she took office. I'll take my screen back real fast so people can see. She took office on, and you'll like this one too, Derek, because I know you talked about this number before too. She took office in 2013 on April 23rd. And to the day that she made the ruling for Ripple. Basically, Ripple kind of won, but they kind of just had to pay a little bit of fines. That's pretty much it. And it was 589 weeks, man.
Yeah, that's that big XRP number that you keep mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole XRP community is about that number. And I posted this on Twitter, man. I got like 60,000 views so far on my post because like everyone saw that, and it was like I knew that it was a dead giveaway. I had to post this on Twitter because those things that can go viral like that easily, because XRP, the whole everyone in XRP knows, even the people that don't believe in all that, they know that number. So to see that this is when she made her final judgment, it just blows my mind, because this is the number we've been talking about. And the same day that this happened, Donald Trump and his son came out and said, we're going to be announcing something big for crypto. And of course, Donald Trump equals 589. And it was Donald Trump's SEC chairman who made the lawsuit, right? And now Donald Trump is saying that they're going to announce something huge. And then a few hours later, the judge makes her ruling 589 weeks after she took office. And I just got to bring this up while I'm live because I just want to show people this. But the 589 is interesting for August 11th also, because not only was it 589 weeks after she took office, declaration Okay, so this equals 589, right? Well, if you go to the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, which was August 2nd, and you go to August 11th, it's 90,589 days. So in a few days, and I think she'll still be in her 589 week when this date hits, since she took office, the judge. The United States will turn the Declaration of Independence, which equals 589, will turn, since it's signing, 90,589 days old. And this is important because the day that Donald Trump was shot, the United States was 90,589 days old. And what makes this connection even more crazy, and big shout out to 7-1, the number 811, like the date that this lands on, the number 811 breaks down to prime, it's 811. The number is the 141st prime also, but I don't know, where did I get that? I think 811 is 3 times 19. Or what was it? 31 times 19.
Oh,
no.
589, yeah.
That's the wrong number. 589. So the 589 day of the Declaration of Independence lands on 8/11, and the 589 number is 19 times 31, and 19 is the 8th prime, and 31 is the 11th prime. So that seems to be very awfully dang coded to me, considering the judge is also in her 589 week right now since she took office, and now she makes this ruling, and then August 11th happens to be coded, kind of connected with the 589 itself.
You know what this reminds me of too is the Star Spangled Banner, which equals 666 in gematria, of course. Francis Scott Key, born on August 1st, which is the same day as the Minnesota bridge collapse. And then we just got the Francis Scott Key bridge collapse earlier this year. And as far as the 19 times 31, the Star Spangled Banner became the national anthem in 1931.
Oh, wow. Wow. And look.
There it is. Yeah, I saw that too. I knew that was there. I forgot about it, but yeah, there it is.
And this is, I did this a few weeks or months back when I was talking about Beyonce's song Cowboy Carter, because she did this Cowboy Carter themed album, which also equals or no, is it, what was it? Beyonce. Yeah, it's Beyonce. If you type her name and her album together, it's Beyonce Cowboy Carter equals 589 1776 in the same ciphers. So yeah, Star Spangled Banner 589 1776, Beyonce Cowboy Carter 589 1776. And again, like, and that's crazy what you just mentioned about the Star Spangled Banner in 1931. Like that's perfect.
Yeah, I wouldn't have made that connection, I don't think, unless you just pointed that out.
Yeah,
March 3rd of 1931. And what's wild is that, you know, Herbert Hoover, who died on the same day Kamala Harris was born, Hoover died exactly 33 years and 33 weeks after 3/3, the date that the Star Spangled Banner was made the national anthem.
Wow. Crazy, man.
So yeah, if you punch that date in there and measure to Kamala's date of birth, 33 years and 33 weeks exactly from 3/3.
Yep. Oh, it's weeks. Okay, 33 weeks and 33 years and 33 weeks. Man. Yeah, so basically what I'm saying, guys, is it seems like, I mean, I think tomorrow, August 9th, is definitely a day to watch for. Also considering something with Kamala Harris, because remember, the wrestler Kamala died on August 9th. And August 9th last year, I was expecting something to happen to Biden and Kamala to possibly replace him last year on August 9th. And what ended up happening was a guy with my last name threatened to assassinate Biden, which was crazy. Like, that was just one of the craziest things that happened to me. Like, I was looking at that date and I made like multiple videos about it. And then just on that day, some guy with my last name threatens Biden. And then now we're looking at a year later, and now everyone's talking about it. I saw Zach Hubbard mentioned 8/9 a few times with Kamala, because that's also the day that Gerald Ford took over. And of course, Gerald Ford is connected to Kamala Harris. And that's also Herbert Hoover. Well, Herbert Hoover was born August 10th, but that's also the 2/22 day of the year in a non-leap year. So yeah, I think it seems to be interesting tomorrow, August 9th, but August 11th is also the day that Kamala took over or was selected as the vice presidential nominee. So I see Joseph's in the chat. Much love, brother. Kamala died on a leap year, the 2/22nd day of the year. Yeah. Yep, he sure did. And, you know, right before he died, he was wearing a shirt that said, if you look it up, that Kamala wrestler, he was wearing a shirt that said, Kamala for president.
Yeah, man, that was so ridiculous. Like, why would a retired wrestler his age even have that shirt? Like, it was so weird.
I mean, it was just, yeah.
I had a picture of it on my blog when I did the post.
Oh, right here it is.
There it is.
So
and the design is like identical to the shirt for this year.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the third image there, it says Kamala 2024, which must be the Kamala Harris shirt that they're selling. And look how similar it looks to Kamala's shirt.
Wait, are you talking about this photo right here?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see. Wow. Well, that's crazy because, I see. Huh. Yeah, and it's just crazy because he died 2 days before she was selected as VP, and then the guy's last name is Harris. Man, this is one of the most obvious things you'll ever see, I think.
Yeah, well, it wasn't obvious enough for my dad. He still didn't get it. I was like, Dad, I predicted years ago that this guy would die in connection to Kamala Harris. And then he dies 2 days before she becomes the VP candidate when he has this shirt on in the media. And he's like, so what? And I'm like, okay, forget it.
I mean, you have to think of the odds of the fact that the guy would decide, okay, and that's the other thing about wrestling that makes it so obvious is the wrestlers and the company WWE clearly chooses their names. They go through. There's a reason they choose these names. They're not just randomly going. So we're just going to pick a random name for somebody. We're just going to call this guy randomly Kamala out of all the names in the entire world to choose to call someone. You choose this name. Almost as if somehow, in the future, there's going to be a presidential candidate named Kamala Harris.
Yeah. And to my knowledge, he didn't get the name Kamala until he went, well, I could be wrong. I was trying to figure out when he first got the name Kamala. So this was in Continental Wrestling is when he first got the name. But Continental Wrestling was run by Jerry Lawler, Jerry Jarrett. These were big names in wrestling.
Right. Oh, Alexa Bliss's birthday is August 9th, too. That's interesting. Her 33rd birthday. Huh. I mean, yeah, just tomorrow could be interesting. I'm not saying especially something's going to happen, but a lot of people have been talking about August 9th. So I don't know. We'll see. But there's something else I wanted to mention before we get off. Is there anything else you want to add before we end it, Derek?
No, I think I got it all out of my system.
Okay. So let's see. Is anyone else? Let's see if anyone in the chat has any good.
I got to step away for a minute. I'll be right back.
All right, no problem. Thank you guys once again for coming in. Please hit those like buttons, everyone. Let's get up to 100. We're almost to 100 likes. I'm sorry I've been bombarding you guys with videos the last few days. I know this is like my 5th video in the last 3 days or something. Hopefully you guys aren't tired of me, but just been a lot going on. So if you guys didn't check out my video about the earthquake in Japan, go check that out from earlier today. Definitely connected with this Ripple thing that happened yesterday. Hello to Maka. Hope you are well, buddy. Thank you, McDaniel, and thank you, Paula. Yeah, so once Derek gets back, we'll say our final things, and let's see what Casey says here. Berlin Wall came down on 128 date in numerology. Tisha B'Av begins on 12/8. Huh. Yeah, I did see lots of 128s. Lots of 128s for this stuff too. I saw a lot coming.
I think it was Tim Walz who was 812 days old when Berlin Wall construction started, or was it Gunther? Let me see. Yeah, so Gunther was 812 days old when the Berlin Wall deconstruction began.
I see.
And 8/12 this year is that Tisha B'Av date, as Casey Jones mentioned.
Yeah, and Carlo just wrote Deutschland 666. Yeah, I think Derek showed that earlier, but that's a good.
Well, I probably got it from him. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Hoover's betrayal equals 1116. Yeah, of course, Daniel E. Yeah, President Kamala Harris 222. Order out of chaos 222. Vice President Harris 222. Kamala Harris 222. It just seems like if there's a perfect day for her to take over, it would be on the 222 day of the year. I mean, come on. But I think that would be just,
February 22nd could work.
yeah, that could work too. But I think that would be like, I don't usually see them do something that obvious, especially since the whole decoding community has been talking about Kamala Harris and 222. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's put it that way. Zenith of the Alpha, glad to see you in the chat, man. The movie Pi released. The movie Pi released until Pi Day was a span of 248 days. 248 composite number is 314. Yeah, that's interesting because the judge that just ruled for XRP last night, her name equals 314, and she ruled 314 days after XRP's proper party last year. And there was a huge 248 connection with that ruling yesterday too, Derek. That ruling yesterday was 2408 days after XRP's highest price ever, its all-time high.
You know, that's cool because we have the big Pi Day lunar eclipse coming up next year on 314, while the U.S. is still 248 years old.
Right. Yeah.
Pi Day eclipse equals 666 in Gematria. So I've been talking about that date a lot recently. It seems to be a really big one.
I think it will be. I think it'll be a big one. I've also had a bunch of decodes last year about a couple days after that on March 26th. There's a huge code for a blackout around that time. So I'm just wondering, next March definitely does seem like it could be some interesting stuff going on. And in considering it's a blood moon, right?
Yeah, it's a full-blown total solar eclipse, total lunar eclipse.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, definitely something to watch for as we get closer to it. There was something with the 314 that just happened the other day. It was like 33 week or what was it? 31 weeks and 4 days or something before something happened, or there's some date that just around this time that lines up with that eclipse. It's like 31 weeks and 4 days before that eclipse. I can't remember now what that was I was connecting.
Well, we had August 5th and 6th were 31 weeks and 4 days before that.
Oh, that was so that was that crash. That market crash was 31 weeks and 4 days before that eclipse.
Yep. And then the nomination too, I guess.
Yep. So I'm thinking this was a fake out market crash. I think that's really what this was. I think the bigger one comes next year, to be honest.
Oof. I hope we're all wrong in that, but
yeah, I hope so too. But I don't know, this whole Japan thing, and me and my girlfriend having decoded XRP for years and its connection to Japan. XRP has a huge connection with Japan, and the Riddlers in the XRP community have always talked about how it all starts with Japan. It all starts with something going down with Japan, and
did you see today there was a 7.1 earthquake right off Japan that triggered a tsunami warning?
Yeah, did you see my video?
No, I didn't get to it. Sorry.
Yeah, so I showed how that was clearly connected to the tsunamis that Bronson Reed did to Seth Rollins a few nights ago on the date of the Japan stocks collapse. The night of that, they had Bronson Reed, the guy from Australia, which isn't so far from Japan, do 6 tsunamis on Seth Rollins, who has a tattoo of this samurai code on his back, which is Japanese, of course. And Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, is a Japanese name, and he wrote a book called Ripple and Wave with the big tsunami wave on it. And of course, this comes one day after the lawsuit with XRP ended. So again, it all connects with XRP in Japan and Satoshi Nakamoto. And what I showed in that video was that it's 700 days exactly after the Queen died today, and tsunami equals 700. And not only is it 700 days after she died, it's exactly 700 weeks after the big Fukushima earthquake tsunami.
Well, that's crazy. Well,
and so tsunami equals 700 in the same cipher as Trump also, by the way. So definitely a lot going on. That video, like, that was crazy to me because I thought that was pretty obvious. And the tsunami thing that they did that night on WWE was also so obvious. But Yeah, Joseph says they they issued a megaquake advisory. So there's apparently what they're saying is this earthquake that happened today could have messed up the fault line enough that there's serious risk of a megaquake. So keep your eyes for that. I'm wondering if that's going to be like something soon or if that's just going to drag out. But they've been symbolizing that for a while. But I'm just wondering what's going to go down with that. So. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for the additions. Thank you, Zenith. Yeah, Zenith mentions all the permutations of 314 add up to 1776. And again, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say before we get off, Derek, but thanks again for coming on and sharing the stream with me. As usual, I always have fun and appreciate our streams. And I'm glad I'm able to get one in here as I'm going through this tumultuous time here in Albania. But
yeah, I know, absolutely. I'm glad to pitch in and help keep you rolling a little bit during this little crazy transition you're in here.
Yeah, it's been crazy, and I'm probably gonna go back to a hostel here in the next couple of days because I have nowhere else to go right now. So don't know if I'm gonna be able to get any videos out after that, but we'll see. And just super hot here too right now in Albania, so you don't even really want to walk anywhere. It's so hot.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Milwaukee, so it's 80 degrees even right now.
Yeah, here it's been like 97 to 100 every day, pretty much.
No thanks.
Yeah. And no clouds in sight either. Like literally not a cloud. Since I've been here over 10 days now, or not, well, 8 days now, I've not seen like one cloudy time at all. It's always the sun's been out. So it's crazy.
Not even a chemtrail, hey?
No, that's the good thing about here. No chemtrails here.
Well, that's wild. Wonder what that's like.
You
feel like I wake up to a crosshatch pattern every other day.
Yeah, in the United States for sure. But here in Albania, there's something about this country. Not only does this country, like, for instance, I have a Chime card, which normally I can use in most countries. This is the one country it doesn't work in. And that actually kind of messes with me because I need to move money and I end up having to buy money on my crypto to use my crypto card to buy stuff because my card doesn't work here because this country is like kind of out on its own a bit.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of it. Maybe they don't spray here because they're kind of separate, I guess, from because I've never seen a chemtrail that I can remember. So
I'd love to hear the explanation from the pros on that one. What, are there no planes flying over Albania? Is the temperature never the right perfect temperature for a chemtrail? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought because there was always these people saying, you know, it's all just because of normal planes flying over their exhaust or something. And I mean, here there's plenty of planes flying over, but it's just there's never any streaks in the sky. So anyways, thank you again for everyone in the chat. We'll go ahead and hang this up. If you guys would please hit the like buttons. We need 2 likes to get to 100. Let's see if we can get there by the end of the stream. And Visionary Vet says soon Albanians will rule the world.
Well, I think you got to win a medal in the Olympics first, right? I don't think they've done that.
I wouldn't imagine they have, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd want Albanians running the world. They're kind of, I don't know, they're kind of tough people. Like, I'm not saying they're bad people, but they're, I don't know, they're kind of emotionless to me, Albanians. Like, they're very emotionless. At least from most of them, when I interact with them on a daily basis, it's almost like they're not even there sometimes. They're just like going through the motions like robots. So even worse than Americans. Like, I guess that's something you could say Americans have too, but here it's just like on another level. But there are some
energy.
There are some really nice Albanians too I've met, but it's definitely not the majority. So all right, so take care, everyone. We'll see you guys in the next video, and God bless, and thank you, everyone. We'll see you.
See ya.